She stood barefoot on the wedding venue, holding her torn slipper in one hand and her tear-stained veil in the other, as mocking laughter echoed behind her. What they didn't know was the luxury car that stopped beside her wasn't just a stranger offering help. It was the turning point of her entire life. Ramy was a quiet, gentle girl who grew up in a small, dusty town. She had no parents, only her old grandmother who loved her deeply, but had very little. They lived in a small wooden house at the edge of town, where Ramy spent her days helping people fix their torn clothes, just to earn a few coins. Every morning, she wore the same old pair of slippers, patched and worn out, because they couldn't afford new ones. People laughed at her. Children pointed and called her rag girl, but Ramy never got angry. She just smiled and kept working. Even though she lived a hard life, Ramy had a big dream. She wanted to become a fashion designer. At night, after everyone was asleep, she would sit by a small lantern and draw dresses in an old notebook. Her hands were rough from sewing, but her heart was soft and full of hope. She imagined her clothes on bright runways, people clapping, and her grandmother watching proudly. But that dream felt far away. She couldn't even buy good fabric for herself. She only sewed clothes for other people, never for her own joy. Sometimes, Ramy would walk past shops with beautiful dresses in the window. She would pause, stare for a few seconds, and then quietly walk away. Not with sadness, but with silent determination. She believed that one day, things would change. One day, her dreams would not live only in her notebook. But until then, she wore her patched slippers, kept her head down, and worked hard. People around her only saw a poor girl with broken shoes. But inside, Ramy knew she was more than what they saw. She was a dream wrapped in old cloth, waiting for her moment. Nori was a rich and famous man. He owned one of the biggest fashion brands in the country. Everyone knew his name, and many people dreamed of meeting him. He lived in a big city, wore expensive clothes, and drove shiny cars. But inside, Nori felt empty. Many people only liked him because of his money and success. They smiled at him, praised him, and wanted to be close, but not because they truly cared. Nori was tired of fake love, tired of people pretending. He wanted to see the world with clear eyes again. One day, Nori decided to return to the small town where he was born. His cousin was getting married, and it was the perfect chance to go back without drawing too much attention. But Nori didn't want anyone to know who he really was, so he came in secret. He dressed like an ordinary man. No suits, no expensive shoes, no bodyguards. Just a quiet guest among many others. No one knew they were standing beside a billionaire. He walked around the village streets, quietly watching. What he saw made his heart ache. People were kind to those who looked rich, but they laughed at the poor. They showed respect to guests with shiny cars, but ignored or insulted those with worn-out clothes. Nori watched carefully. He wanted to see who treated people with true kindness, not because of money or looks, but from the heart. He sat in silence at the wedding preparations, helping with simple tasks. Some people looked down on him, thinking he was just another villager, but Nori didn't mind. He wanted to feel life as it really was. He wanted to find someone who didn't care about money or fame, someone who could see his heart. And in that dusty town, while hiding behind simple clothes, Nori was about to find the one person who would change everything. Ramy's life took a painful turn when her grandmother, worried and tired, made a decision Ramy never wanted. Their small house was almost taken away because they couldn't pay back a loan. The landlord had been patient for months, but now he wanted his money. With nowhere else to turn, Ramy's grandmother made a deal with a local family. In exchange for clearing the debt, Ramy would marry their son, Cole. Cole was not a kind or humble boy. He was proud, lazy, and full of himself. He always walked around the town like he owned it. He laughed at poor people, never helped anyone, and thought he was too good for everyone. The idea of marrying him broke Ramy's heart. She didn't love him. She didn't even like him. But when she saw her grandmother crying, scared of losing their only home, Ramy stayed silent. She nodded and accepted the marriage. Not for herself, but for the woman who raised her with love. The whole town started whispering, "Ramy is marrying Coley. Why would he choose a poor girl?" Others laughed. Maybe they paid him. Ramy heard it all, but kept her head down. She didn't have money for a wedding dress, and Cole's family didn't care to help. So, with tears in her eyes and courage in her heart, she went to her little sewing corner and began to make her own dress. She used leftover fabric pieces from old clothes, some white, some not so white. Stitch by stitch, She poured her heart into the dress. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. It carried her pain, her strength, and her silent dreams. She didn't cry out loud, but her hands shook every time she sewed. She wasn't just making a dress. She was sewing her story. The night before the wedding, Ramy looked at the dress she had made. She touched it gently and whispered, "Just one more day, then everything will be okay." She didn't know that tomorrow her world would turn upside down, not with more pain, but with the most unexpected twist of her life. A twist that would begin with broken slippers and end with a car that changed everything. The sun was bright, but Ramy's heart felt heavy as she walked slowly toward the wedding venue. She wore the dress she had made with her own hands, holding the edges carefully so it wouldn't drag on the dusty road. Her hair was tied simply, and her old slippers, worn out and patched many times, were the only shoes she had. With every step, her heart beat faster. People had already gathered, and the sound of drums and laughter filled the air. But Ramy felt alone, scared and unsure. As she got closer to the gate, just a few steps away, something terrible happened. One of her slippers gave way. The thin strap tore apart, and before she could stop herself, she stumbled and fell hard on the ground. Dust flew into the air. Her hands scraped against the stones, and her veil slipped off her head. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then the laughter began. Loud, cruel, mean. People pointed at her, whispering and giggling. "Look at the bride. She can't even afford shoes," someone said. "Is this a wedding or a joke?" Another voice laughed. And then came the voice that hurt the most. Cole, the man she was about to marry. He stood with his friends, smirking. "I told my parents she was a rag bride," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "Now everyone can see it for themselves." Ramy sat on the ground, her knees shaking, her eyes burning. But she didn't cry, not one tear. Slowly she picked up her torn slipper and stood up. She brushed off the dust from her dress, fixed her veil, and looked straight ahead. Her feet were bare now, but she didn't hide them. She didn't run. She didn't shout. Instead, she stood there, quiet, proud, and strong. She didn't care about their laughter anymore. She didn't care about Cole's cruel words. Deep inside her heart, something was changing. Something strong was waking up. She had walked through pain before, and she would do it again. Even without shoes, Ramy was not broken. What no one knew was that someone was watching from a distance, and in just a few seconds, everything in Ramy's life was about to change forever. Ramy stood there for a moment, barefoot and silent, holding her broken slipper in one hand. Her heart was heavy, but her eyes were dry. She turned away from the crowd, from the mocking voices, from Cole's cruel smirk, and began to walk. Each step on the hot ground hurt her feet, but she kept going. People watched her, laughed, and whispered. Some even took pictures, but Ramy didn't stop. She just wanted to leave that place forever. Then, something unexpected happened. A black luxury car with shiny body and dark-tinted windows slowly pulled up beside her. Everyone turned to look. The engine was quiet, but the presence of the car was loud. It didn't belong in their small town. No one had ever seen a car like that there before. The back door opened gently, and out stepped a tall man in a simple outfit. It was Nori, but no one recognized him yet. He looked like a regular guest, not the rich fashion mogul he truly was. He walked straight to Ramy. People held their breath, confused and curious. Ramy looked up, surprised. She had never seen him before. Then, Nori did something that no one expected. He took off his fine leather shoes and gently placed them in front of her. Then, he knelt down on one knee, not to propose, not to impress, but simply to show her kindness. With care, he helped her into the shoes. Everyone watching was stunned. Mouths dropped open. Cameras stopped clicking. He looked at her and said softly, "No bride should be treated like this." The words hit deep, not just for Ramy, but for everyone there. He helped her stand. Then he opened the car door and gently guided her inside. Ramy was shocked, confused, but something inside her felt safe for the first time in a long while. The crowd was silent now. Cole's face turned pale. People whispered, "Who is he? Why is he helping her?" But Nori said nothing more. He got into the car beside her, and the driver slowly pulled away. As the car disappeared down the road, the town was left in silence and shame. And Ramy, the girl they laughed at just moments ago, had just driven away in the most expensive car they'd ever seen. with the man no one could touch. Her story was no longer about broken slippers. It was just beginning. The wedding was supposed to be the biggest event in town. Chairs were arranged, food was ready, and guests had gathered, waiting to see the bride walk in. But instead, all they saw was Ramy walking away barefoot, and then disappearing into a luxury car with a mysterious man. At first, people were shocked. Then, the whispers began. Who was that man? Why did he take her? Did you see how he helped her like she was royalty? Inside the venue, Cole stood awkwardly at the altar, pretending everything was fine. His face was tight with anger and shame. His friends looked at him in disbelief. His mother pulled him aside, hissing, "We must say something before this ruins us." They rushed to the microphone and lied, telling the crowd that Ramy had run off because she was nervous. They said the wedding would continue later, but it was too late. The guests didn't believe them. Phones were buzzing. Photos of the moment Ramy was helped into the car were already flying across social media. Someone even captioned it. "The girl with broken slippers got picked by a billionaire." That one line spread like wildfire. People in town couldn't stop talking. They laughed, not at Ramy anymore, but at Cole and his family. Soon, the music stopped. The chairs were empty. The food sat untouched. The wedding was over, and the bride was gone. No one had seen anything like it before. The next day, Ramy's little house was quiet. Her grandmother sat alone, confused but hopeful. She didn't know where her granddaughter had gone, but she had seen the kind look in that man's eyes. She believed Ramy was safe. Days turned into weeks. Some people said Ramy had gone abroad. Others said the man was a prince. Nobody knew the truth, but one person did. Nori. He had taken Ramy far away from the shame, the insults, and the pain. He didn't take her out of pity. He saw her strength. He saw her dream. He knew she was someone special. While the town gossiped and Cole sulked in embarrassment, Ramy was already starting a new chapter, one no one saw coming. She didn't disappear. She just left behind the place that never saw her worth. And now, the world would. Nori didn't take Ramy to the city to impress her, or make her fall in love. He saw something deeper in her eyes. Strength, talent, and the kind of heart that refuses to break, no matter how many times it's been stepped on. He brought her to the city not as a charity case, but as someone with a gift the world needed to see. At first, Ramy was nervous. The tall buildings, the bright lights, and the busy streets were nothing like her quiet town. But Nori didn't pressure her. He gave her a small space in his design studio, a box of fabric, and said, "Show me what your hands can do." And she did. Ramy started sewing quietly in the corner. Her first piece was made from leftover materials. It wasn't fancy, but it had something the others didn't. Soul. It spoke of pain, hope, and survival. One of the stylists in the studio noticed and took a picture. That photo ended up online and quickly went viral. People started asking, "Who made this? Where can we find more?" Nori just smiled. He knew it was only the beginning. Every day Ramy worked harder. She came early, left late, and sewed like her life depended on it. Her dresses weren't just clothes. They told stories. Each stitch carried her past, her dreams, and her quiet power. Slowly, the team at the studio started respecting her. Big stylists began requesting her work. Her name, once laughed at in her village, started appearing in fashion blogs and design shows. But Ramy stayed humble. She didn't want fame. She just wanted to create, to prove that the girl in patch slippers could be more than anyone expected. Nori never tried to take credit. He stayed in the background, smiling every time she succeeded. To him, Ramy was no longer the girl who fell on her wedding day. She was now the rising star of his studio. And maybe, just maybe, a piece of his heart began to believe in something he hadn't felt in years. Love that grows from respect, not riches. Ramy had gone from sewing for others to making her own mark. From a needle in a small town to a new life in the big city, she was finally becoming who she was always meant to be. 1 year later, the biggest fashion show of the year was happening in the city. Celebrities, designers, photographers, everyone important in fashion was there. The lights were bright, the music loud, and the runway shiny like glass. People had been talking about a surprise final piece, the last model of the night. No one knew who it would be, but the crowd was buzzing with excitement. Then, the lights dimmed. A soft spotlight shone at the end of the runway, and there she was, a beautiful young woman, walking slowly, barefoot, in a dress that looked like a dream. Her head was held high. Her eyes were calm and confident. Every step she took made people sit up straighter. She didn't wear any expensive jewelry or heels, just a long, flowing dress made of soft, shining fabric that caught the light in the most magical way. But what made people gasp wasn't just the dress, it was the story behind it. The announcer spoke into the mic, his voice strong and clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, this masterpiece was designed by Ramy Cole, the girl they once laughed at, the girl with broken slippers." There was silence for a moment. Then, the room exploded in applause. People stood up, clapping, cheering, some even wiping tears. And far away, back in her dusty hometown, many were watching the show on live TV. Faces that once mocked her were now frozen in shock. Cole and his family were sitting in front of the screen, speechless. The same girl he left at the altar was now making headlines. The whole country was talking about her. Everyone remembered the story. The barefoot bride who walked away. The girl whose slippers broke, but whose spirit didn't. Now, she had walked the runway with no shoes again, not because she was poor, but because she chose to. It was her message to the world. She didn't need luxury to shine. That night, Ramy didn't just show a dress. She showed courage. She turned her pain into beauty. And from the corners of the crowd to the screens in her hometown, people saw what true strength looks like. Ramy had arrived, and this time, nobody dared to laugh. Ramy returned to the same town where her heart once broke. But this time, everything was different. She didn't come back in shame or sadness. She came back strong, successful, and shining. Her clothes were elegant, her hair perfectly done, and her heels clicked softly on the dusty road. People gathered quickly. Word spread fast. "Ramy is back!" Everyone wanted to see her. The same neighbors who once laughed at her now whispered in awe. Some tried to greet her with big smiles, acting like they had always believed in her. But Ramy knew the truth. She remembered every face, every word, every laugh. She walked with grace, head held high. She wasn't angry. She didn't shout. She didn't try to prove anything. Her silence was louder than any words. As she passed the spot where her old slippers once tore and made her fall, she paused for just a second. Her new heels tapped gently on the ground, like a soft reminder of how far she had come. From broken slippers to designer shoes, made by her own hands. Then came Cole. He rushed out from the crowd, face pale, eyes full of regret. He held a microphone, trying to speak in front of everyone. "Ramy," he said loudly, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me." The crowd went silent. All eyes were on her. Everyone waited to hear what she would say. Ramy looked at him calmly. She didn't frown. She didn't cry. She just smiled, softly, beautifully. Then, without saying a word, she turned and walked past him. Her heels clicked louder now, each step like a beat of victory. Cole stood frozen, holding the mic, lost in shame. Ramy didn't need to talk about the past. Her presence was enough. Her glow said it all. The girl they once mocked had become a woman they all admired. She didn't come back to show off. She came to remind herself and the world that what broke her once could never break her again. And as she walked away, the wind lifted her dress slightly, like it too was proud of how far she had come. At the entrance of Ramy's fashion school for girls from small villages, there is something simple yet powerful inside a glass case. It's not a golden trophy or a fancy dress. It's her old broken slippers, the same ones that tore on the day of her almost wedding, the same ones that made her fall. But now, they don't look like shame. They look like strength. They sit carefully in that glass box, with a little light shining on them, like a treasure. Beneath them, there's a small plaque that says, "They broke that day, so I could walk into who I was meant to be." Every girl who enters the school stops and stares at those slippers. Some gasp, some tear up. They know the story. They've heard how Ramy was once mocked, called names, and treated like nothing, just because she was poor. But now, she's the one giving hope, teaching them how to sew, how to design, and most of all, how to believe in themselves. Those slippers remind them that even when life breaks you, it might be the start of something beautiful. Ramy often walks by that case quietly. She doesn't touch it. She just smiles, because those broken slippers carried her out of pain and into purpose. They remind her of her grandmother's love, of her courage that day, and of the man who saw her worth when no one else did. They are not just old shoes. They are a symbol of a journey from rejection to recognition, And so, the schoolgirls don't see them as trash. They see them as a trophy of transformation. And deep in their hearts, they whisper, if Rami could rise from this, maybe I can too. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll without sharing it. Someone out there needs this reminder. Your broken moment could be the beginning of your breakthrough. Share to inspire, comment, I believe in my journey, and follow for more stories that lift your soul.